So in these meetings, how much dialogue is back and forth? Is it mostly you speaking? Is it them just kind of listening and then once they're done, it's okay, great, thank you very much?
We're talking about the meetings when I'm meeting with like an agent or a manager.
Right, right.
Really what it is it's they want to get to know you. They want to know what you have written, what you have to offer, what your goals are, what your projections are, and what you're there to accomplish. So a lot of it really is, I'm sure it's a back and forth, it's question and answer, but a majority is them becoming familiarized with your product and who you are as a person and what you're trying to sell and the stories that you're trying to tell. So just like I'd mentioned before, I will personally talk about the success that I've had in the sense of selling a screenplay and a film that's gone into production and post-production and scheduled to be in theaters with some great actors that were attached. Because I'm trying to make myself as marketable as possible and show that I can offer something to the table, and hopefully in return having them offer something for me as well. So I would say that a majority of it, without trying to oversell yourself, should be talking about the things that you're excited about. I treat meeting with agents and managers or even producers the same as meeting with friends and telling them about the things that I am really, really excited about. The projects that I'm working on, the people who are attached, which changes on a daily basis, the actors that you get depending on schedules. You have great actors attached to a project one day and then the next day they're gone, but that day that they're there, it's fun to say it. It's fun to talk about it. And it's the same thing, with Killing Winston Jones, we had financing set up 3 times and it fell through for 3 different times. So there wasn't one of those times where I didn't tell people, we have financing, we're finally going to make it, it's going to happen, because I was excited about it. And and finally it did happen. We finally found a production company that was going to make that particular project. So I think meeting with managers and agents, I'm talking about the projects I'm excited about, telling them why these are projects that can be made and can be marketable and can be lucrative and can make everyone money. Because at the end of the day, and this is something that I mentioned before, is this is a business. Especially when you're talking about agents and managers. People have livelihoods. They want to make money. They want to be successful. So you need to give them a product that they can be successful with. Don't sacrifice the integrity of your story ever, but know that at the end of the day, you have something that you need to sell and you need to help make money on.
How much time should someone be prepared to go in and speak with someone? Let's suppose they want to have their sort of, who they are and what they're about speech ready. How much time are they looking at? 15 minutes?
Yeah, 15 minutes is probably a good amount of time. I mean, the thing is, you should have your About Me bio honed at that point, too. So, average pitches, when you go in to pitch a pilot to a studio or a network, you got about 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're lucky. And the thing is, with that being said, if they're interested, then they're going to ask you questions, and that meeting will run as long as it needs to run. So give yourself 15 minutes to say everything that you need to say and hope that they start asking you questions and it runs, longer than it should. Unless they have a hard out because they have a meeting that they have to run off to, they'll usually give themselves at least a half hour. If in 15 minutes they're done, I'm not saying lose all hope, but it's like anything. If you want to build a relationship or you want to build a friendship, there's got to be back and forth. You have to find commonalities. You have to like each other. You're going to ask each other questions in the beginning. So look to, pique their interest and make yourself interesting as a storyteller and as, someone who has a producer's hat on at that moment.
And in closing, what's the closure to the meeting? Are you shake hands, thank them for their time, say you're going to send a follow-up email, or how is it?
What I try and do personally is I try to make sure that out of the projects that I pitch them, there's something that piqued their interest. So then you leave with something that you're going to send to them. So you're going to send an email to follow up and say, well, you were interested. I pitched you 4 different projects that I'm working on that I'm all excited about. You seem to be interested in this one. I want you to read it and look at me. This is a great writing sample for me. And I'd love for you to see if this is something that's in your wheelhouse or you'd like to represent someone that writes in this genre. So I think that you never want it to be close-ended. You want it to be open-ended so that you can continue that communication. I mean, if your concepts fall flat and they don't care about any of them, maybe you can find a connection with someone that you know in the industry, or maybe you can find a connection with sports, or maybe you're from the same hometown. Anything that'll at least keep the dialogue going so that when you try to reapproach them in the future, you can say, hey, remember we're from the same hometown. Or, hey, remember we worked on a project with so-and-so, or you represent someone who's a good friend of mine, those types of things. Always leave it open-ended so you have a connection, so you can utilize those resources in the future. There's no reason not to have the connections and keep connections with every single person that you run across, especially if they're successful in the industry.
So you're following up with like a card or an email. I don't know if people send cards anymore, but an email.
Yeah, emails really. It's all about tangibility. So I would say send them something that they have of yours, because then it opens up the dialogue. If you send a script, chances are they're probably not going to. Their scripts are going to be this high on their desk. They're going to have 100 that they need to get to. Give them a reason to read yours. Maybe you have interest from some actors. Maybe you have interest from investors. Maybe you have someone who wants to option the project, and them knowing that it's potentially getting optioned, they see that they're going to be getting 5% of that or 10% of that if it's a project that they want to do as well. So give them something that they have to respond on. And this is another thing, this is an unspoken rule, but when you send a script to a producer or an agent or anyone, give them 3 weeks, at least 3 weeks, to read the script. If they haven't read it in 3 weeks, just send a small, short email saying, hey, thank you for taking a look at the script, or thank you for accepting it. Did you have a chance to read it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is what's going on with it at this moment, and look forward to hearing from you. Because 3 weeks will give them a decent amount of time. Chances are they won't have read it by that point, but you prod them a little bit and they'll probably read it within the next 3 weeks. If they don't read it in the next 3 weeks, send another email, just a follow-up, But you don't want to be the person who's sending follow-up after follow-up and saying, hey, did you read it? And it's going to be so good, and pushing the project. They're going to ultimately make the decision if it's good or not. They're so busy with other things. Give them the time and the respect to get to the project when they can get to it.
At what time do you stop sending those emails?
That's a good question. I think that, 3 or 4 emails are usually about the limit for me personally. If I feel like it's a very good lead, and it's someone that actually might want to represent me, or someone that might want to produce a film that I've written, I might look at other ways of approaching them. So I will find out if someone else has a relationship with them and have them drop a line. I'll look for ulterior ways of getting to that person rather than sending something directly to them. Because, you can't necessarily write someone off if you've been emailing them for months and they haven't responded, because they could just be incredibly busy. An example is the project that John Heater and I are writing, that we're adapting Fatso. We have sent email after email to Ram Bergman because he's incredibly busy. He's a huge success as a producer. Don John has taken up almost all of his time over the last several weeks and months. He's constantly in production, constantly developing projects. So, we reached out for weeks, and then we had John's representation at Gersh start reaching out because they had a personal relationship with Ram, and then they started to have a conversation with him, and then slowly but surely we got to him, and now we're looking to negotiate those terms so that we can adapt this and be hired on as writers. So I don't think that you should necessarily give up hope, but find creative ways to potentially get to them, and you shouldn't be approaching one person and not 100 others. So it's one of those things where, when it's like, if you have one script, every time you send it out and you get a rejection, you're going to be devastated. It just hurts. But when you have 10 scripts and you send them out, and maybe there's a little traction on one of them, and maybe someone's actually optioning another one and you're getting rejected by the other 8, who cares about the other 8? You got one that people care about, and you got one that someone's optioning. Like, that keeps you going. So be reaching out to 100 people, because I guarantee you there's not going to be 100 people that aren't responding to you. There's going to be a few that'll have piqued interest and will continue the conversation, and those are the ones that you want to go after.